If you think about what the technology that is the internet brought to the world, it's something very specific that did not exist before, which is the capacity for translocal self-organization. Markets and states have not been able to do regeneration. They just
Yes.
haven't. And so we're going to need something else if we want to break through that barrier, which I call the third information barrier. If we want to break through that barrier, we're going to have to invent something new. It's not just doing the old stuff in a new way, right? And it's not
Yeah.
the old debate between more state or more market. It's different. It's a different
Yeah.
debate.
Hi, I'm Michelle Weber, founder of House of Peregrine. This show is for life abroad and those crafting their life story with intention. I bring you conversations about international finances, meaning making, relationships, and parenting. I bring on the experts that help you on your journey so that you can connect more deeply with yourself, the people around you, and the place you currently call home. Find out more at houseofperegrine.com, where you can find exclusive guides, products, software, and a community that's waiting to welcome you. Welcome to House of Peregrine. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the House of Peregrine podcast. I'm Mickelle Weber, your host, and today's guest is one of those minds who help you zoom out and then somehow comes back down to earth with more clarity. Michel Bauwens is the founder of the P2P Foundation, an observatory and advocacy hub for all things peer-to-peer and commons-based. In other words, how humans organize, create, and care for what we share, especially in times when the old systems feel increasingly flimsy. Michel is Belgian, a father of 4, and he's been living in Chiang Mai, Thailand since 2003. He spent decades tracking a question that feels deeply relevant to life abroad and, honestly, to the world right now. What happens when the ways we've been taught to build society, economically, socially, politically, stop matching the world we're actually living in? One of Michel's core ideas is something he calls Cosmo-Local, this practical principle that says all things heavy are more local and all things light are global and shared. So the stuff that requires resources, labor, land, logistics, keep that grounded, keep it local. But knowledge, design, code, shared learning, let that move freely. Let that be shared globally. It's a framework that feels especially resonant for us peregrines, who are people living between worlds, navigating belonging, systems, and identity across borders. In this conversation, we explore what Michel describes as civilizational transition, why the political narratives we've inherited are struggling to hold, why our debates about technology and ecology keep getting stuck, and what a third path might look like. One that's rooted in commons, not as a utopia, as a lived human practice of mutual responsibility, shared value, and real-world resilience. If you've ever felt the tension between wanting progress and needing limits, between global connection and local reality, or between the life you're building and the systems you're building it inside of, this episode is going to give you language to describe what you're going through. Michel, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. And that was a long intro, but I think well worth it.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. There's so much here that I'm excited to dive in. So first, just for our audience, will you please just briefly introduce yourself in what you're up to?
Well, I think you said most of it. I moved from Belgium to Thailand in 2003. I got married locally, got 2 new kids here. So I have 4 kids in all. The youngest is 21. And I've kind of left, Belgium because I couldn't get excited anymore about basically the commercial world. I was doing digital strategy for a large telco, the largest in Belgium. Before that, in the 90s, I had launched a magazine, done a 3-hour documentary, and launched 2 startups. And yeah, just the whole, profit focus kind of didn't feel enough for me. And so one way I like to put it is that I feel in my life, but also in general in society, that there should be a balance between extractive and regenerative, right? So what you and I and the world needs from the world, food, shelter, there's no way around that. We need to do that, but we also need to maintain our house so that it can last, for ages, essentially. And I don't think we're doing that. So I don't think the current political system that we have, political economy, actually achieves that. So we are in this imbalance and it's accelerating. And so that kind of creates the need to look for, is there another way to do this to achieve this balance between regeneration and extractivism?
Yeah. Would
And
you Are you
yes,
familiar
go
with
ahead.
sorry to interrupt, but it just
No, no,
brought
go
to
ahead.
mind the idea. Are you familiar with the idea of positive ownership?
Not sure exactly what you mean it with that, but I follow people like generative ownership. Marjorie Kelly, for example, this is one of the people I follow, and
Yeah.
she has a more or less precise definition of what it means to own something so that you grow it and maintain its resource base at the same time. So if
Yeah.
that's what you mean,
That's what I
yeah,
came to me when you were saying,
yeah, yeah, absolutely,
because
yeah.
and that sorry to interrupt you. So what is the manifestation of that right now? And then I'll get into my question. Sorry, I'm a little excited.
Well, I follow two notions since 2003. One is called peer to peer, and that's basically what we're doing here. Basically, if you think about what the technology that is the internet brought to the world, it's something very specific that did not exist before, which is the capacity for translocal self organization. We were in a physical world, in a geographical world. So, some people would call it the geosphere, the world of matter, of our bodies. Then we have the biosphere, the sphere of life, which came after. But now we have the noosphere, the community of the mind. And it existed in terms of like fast transportation and fast communication, but it didn't exist in instantaneous. And this is what we have now: is many too many instantaneous, permanent capacity to communicate and self-organize and create and distribute value. And that really means we have two layers now: the layer that existed, that we're familiar with, like the layer of civilization, essentially, and then the layer of whatever we want to call what is coming. And the whole challenge for humanity is, how do we bring those two levels together?
Yeah.
Because
And we and
you can also be very destructive if you're not rooted.
yeah, rooted and have
So
values and have
so
actual
we need to
value
rethink.
guided.
We need to rethink the relationship, and that's why I talk really about post civilization, because I actually do think that civilization, which came after the tribe, so that you have the tribal world based on kinship, based on location. Then we have this larger complex world based on division of labor, armies, states, commerce, with markets and states. And this has been the case for 5,000 years, in different iterations, but that remained the basic organization of our world. Town and country, getting a surplus from farming to get industry going, then get a surplus from industry going to get the cognitive going. And I think this is where we are.
And so you think we're going somewhere new.
Absolutely. And in
And I
my more
agree. I
optimistic
just
days, I call it post civilization, because I actually think if it's no longer just based on the physical relation between town and country, it's going to be something different. And I actually, just wrote an article about this. It's called it Breaking the Third Information Barrier, right?
yeah, awesome.
So humanity was doing gifting and commoning mostly, for thousands and thousands of years. So, the state and the market were not existing or very marginal. Then we move to this kind of permanent coexistence and competition between state and markets forms, either the nation or the corporation. But I think actually we're now going to something new, which is based on, and let me just use the words first, even if they're difficult for most people: stigmergy and the commons. Stigmergy means mutual signaling. So if you think, how does free software happen? Like Linux that everybody's using, including the biggest companies are using it now.
Yeah, I use Linux.
It's based on mutual signaling. So you have an open ecosystem, an open digital ecosystem, where everybody can see from their own point of view what it is they could be doing. They don't have to, but they can if they want to, if they have the right skills. And then you decide whether to give or not give your contribution to that common entity, right? So that's peer-to-peer signaling. And my claim is a very strong claim, of course, but I think you can already see it happening, is that this is a partial replacement for markets and states. Not fully, but already partially. If you just to make the advanced claim already, You're probably familiar, and some of your audience, with DAOs, distributed
Yeah.
autonomous organizations.
Yes, but thank
If
you
you
for
look at
defining
it,
it. Go ahead.
if you look at what a DAO is, that's what it is. It's incentive alignment institution, and it can do markets, it can sell and buy, it can make agreements with public authorities, make through contracts, and it can make contributions that nobody has asked for but that are allowed in the system. So open, permissionless contributions. And so it's already introduces stigmergy, but it also already is a meta organization that can deal with markets and states while actually offering even more than what they can, right? And so I
Or
would argue, and this
offer
is of course a
something,
very,
or I would say offer something they
yeah,
can't, which is
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah, yeah,
replacing,
something new
but
as well. So
offer.
it's both adding and then transforming the whole mix. But I would argue that you know markets and states have not been able to do regeneration. They just haven't. And so we're going to need something else if we want to break through that barrier, which I call the third information barrier. If we want to break through that barrier, we're going to have to invent something new. It's not just doing the old stuff in a new way. And it's not
Yeah.
the old debate between more state or more market. It's different. It's a different
Yeah.
debate.
Maybe it's more human or more global or more something, but we know something's emerging. And it occurs to me, at least this has been my own journey a little bit, is that value and values, what we've based value and values on has been pretty rooted in this idea that you're saying, which is like city state. I call it a dominance and a dominance model. It's been based on that, and also value being very specific to what you can quantify. And so that my
But
audience
it's a
knows that
commodity,
that's,
right? So the way
yeah,
I would
it's a
put
commodity.
it is that, I mean, the commodity has existed for a long time, but it really became completely dominant, I would say, starting in this, 16th, 18th century. That's when, because even before we were discussing whether, value didn't come from land or from labor. And then it's like, okay, it's about making commodities and selling them for profit. This is how the system works.
Yep.
Only that way.
Yep. And I feel like that's being roundly rejected at the moment, I guess, is that's where the DAOs emerged. What would you say? Like for me, they emerged maybe like 8 years ago. They kind of started emerging, kind of hit a
Yeah, well,
peak.
actually, you probably don't know that, but the Bitcoin white paper was published on my website.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And I'm the first and the last person to have talked with Satoshi outside of the cryptographic mailing list as well. So I don't know who he is, and it's just email, and it's archived in Bitcoin magazine.
Hmm.
But it seemed that he recognized something in my work because
Hmm.
he was doing peer-to-peer tech and I was doing peer-to-peer social.
Yeah.
And I think he must have recognized some kind of familiarity, and that's why he decided to do it here. Now, I did lose my thread. Maybe you can
Sorry.
remind me what I
Yeah. No.
was going to
What I
reply
wanted
to.
to. Yeah. Just what I wanted to bring to our listeners is this idea that what we currently have modeled our world on and connection and commerce was one way. And then I feel like for a while there, at least one part of
Right.
technologists
Yes.
and
Now I know what I wanted to
culture,
say.
yeah, went towards DAOs. And that kind of was a huge experiment with,
Well,
it's
here's
still ongoing.
the way I would put it, which actually is also an answer to your own earlier work about valuing women's work. So the value is now exclusively derived from the notion of a commodity, a product.
Yeah.
So you need scarce resources, you make something that's also scarce with it, a product. It has a tension between supply and demand, and that creates the price. The price creates profit. Profit allows for taxation and redistribution. But here's the thing: we need to extract first, and then only then can we redistribute, and that's a problem because it's always behind. The regeneration is always behind. So it's like there's a structural deficit in the way we look at value. And I think what is happening already, this is not like a, predictions for the future, is that in this system that is emerging, that you can see in open source, in crypto, in DAOs, is that the value is already contributory. So I'll give you an example. I'll take a free software like Linux, which, is an operating system that can replace Microsoft if you want. So it's where does it value come from? From all the people contributing to the code base, to the common code base. Some of them are paid by big companies, some of them are independents, some of them work for free. Like around 25% of the people work for free because it's open so they can solve their own issues. And that's why they don't ask anybody permission to make it better, right? So on top of that, now, if you have a freely copyable digital resource, I have bad news for you if you're a business person, because it's not scarce. There's no price. So it's
And now there's
actually,
AI.
yeah, it's already outside of that scarcity paradigm. But in order to make it work in the world, you still need to do a lot of scarce work. So, and this is why the business model is entirely different. It's not buying a resource, hiring labor, making a product and selling it. Here it is, participating in this common endeavor, seeing what needs to be done to make it workable in the real world. So and then you're going to add value to it. And that added value is the market. But so what you've done, and this is very important to understand now, what you have done without realizing it is you inverted the logic already. Because the primary logic is contributory and the commodity logic is derivative from the contribution. So now you get a new logic, which is if I'm a company and I want to be successful, I cannot just merely exploit the commodity. I actually have to nurture the commons from which I am interdependent, right? So this is already happening within the broad economy. And already in 2012, there were calculations that it was already 1/6 of GDP in the US. So I'm just saying this because it's not something that's gonna happen.
Yeah, it's
It's
happening.
already there. And then maybe give you one more element to show you how crypto is different from open source. The problem with the open source model was that if you were working for free, regeneratively on the common code base, nobody was paying you. That was a problem. And then, big companies came in like IBM and they started subsidizing, which has its own issues. But in crypto, basically, we find a way to pay for that common labor. And I don't know
In a
if you're
way that,
familiar with
in a
this.
way that buys food. Like that was
Exactly,
the whole thing.
exactly.
You have
So
to be able to
basically,
buy a pizza.
first we tried it with these, what was it called? The ICOs, uh, yeah. And so usually what was done then, it was made illegal and difficult. But what was done then was that 40% of the money was actually reserved for labor. So I was automatically, paid. And what they're doing now, it's a bit more complicated, but they're doing something called public funding. And so they're taxing themselves. And then they're doing these public funding rounds, which remunerates the common work. So that's, in a way, an improvement in some fundamental way over the open source model, because now everybody in these circles gets paid. And, you shouldn't underestimate that. So it's $5 trillion floating around in this economy already, pure crypto flows. You have 50 million digital nomads.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying they're all doing crypto, but a sizable amount of these people are doing crypto and open source
Yep.
and are part of this
By
broader,
necessity.
yeah,
By
yeah,
necessity, some of them.
yeah. There's different reasons. And so this is a new world that's growing within the old, right? So it's not an utopia. There's issues, there's problems, but it's definitely there. And it's definitely, in my view, where it is going, right?
Yeah, and I think that people, what I have noticed is that it is in the getting into the infrastructure of our world and changing the way things are done slowly without people really noticing. And so it's like a revolution that's happening for some people, awareness. But what I think we both have kind of a inclination to do is to bring some of these values out into the real world, into the world where humans live. And crypto's one way, right? Like money, transfer of value, that's one way. But what if now that we have that, those values or those ideas, our idea of what things can be, what contribution is, what this sort of thing,
So, well,
what
yeah,
if
that's the
that
whole
can
point, right?
evolve?
So
Yeah.
that's the whole point is how do you get from something that you already experiencing to a broader culture? And I think this is the kind of intermediary system where we're in. So I will offer you a reading of current politics that actually, in a way, argues this is what is happening, right?
Yeah.
So
Let's
you're
hear it.
probably familiar with what's his name? Okay, I forgot the name of the author. It's David Goodman, I think. No, it's about the somewheres and the nowheres, and it's an explanation of why we have populism. So basically, you have people like us, more highly educated. We know how to work with computers. We can move around. We were more or less okay with the globalization trends because, okay, we can manage.
It's exciting for us, not scary. Yeah.
A lot of other people don't experience the world that way because they have physical skills linked to certain types of machines that are located. They became basically more displaced and they are feeding. So we do have, you have to recognize is we do have forces in our world who actually do want to bring back the nation state. And this is and we have to take that seriously. Like these people could win and become the dominant force and could change our world in a particular way. And in a way, I think you can see the current global geopolitics as a struggle between the landlocked Chinese, Russian, state-centric, but still old form, actually old form. Even they have high tech, but they still see the world in like from the point of view of these big nation states. And then we have the more trading, business oriented, you know, American style. Okay, I what I propose to you is that there's a third force. And that third force would be all those people who say, well, we don't really want to choose between those two. I think there's something else coming. And a way to look at it is, if you had lived in the 14th century, or maybe 16th century, okay, that period, because, it's hard
Mm-hmm.
to pin down. But
Yeah.
so here's what happened, right? 90% of the people in Europe were still living on the land with lords as serfs or various, of these regimes. That was their world. At the same time, though, you had all these people in the cities, where they were highly educated, they were building something new, all these city states, right? And so now imagine you're in Italy in the 16th century. You get the Spanish and the French armies invading. Why? Because they have dynasties already. They can operate at a nation scale. They have cannons and pikes, and you cannot defend yourself, right? So at that moment, I imagine that those people in this Italian city state started thinking, we need something else. We need to move like them. We also need our own nations. So this is, I think, what I ask you to do today. Our listeners is to imagine that, yeah, most of the people are still in this world where they think, it's based on industry, working in factories and maybe in services.
Or even at startups.
Yeah, but there's already
Yeah.
something else, right?
Yeah. It is something else, but the mentality is still that. It's still physical at some level.
Yes, but in my world, maybe more
Yeah.
than yours, I'm not sure what kind of life you have, but certainly, I'm okay. I'm not a nomad actually. I'm an expat in a way. I'm or a migrant. But my milieu is actually a lot of digital nomads. And I can tell you that for them, and there's many of them,
Hmm.
their imagination has already moved on.
Yes, absolutely.
They're
Absolutely. I
not
totally agree
waiting
with that.
for the Netherlands or Germany to get a new lease on life and become. No, 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 no. They're thinking about, can we join a network nation?
Yes.
Can we
Yeah,
join a
absolutely.
network state? So their imaginary is already post-national. And you'd be surprised. I've seen, surveys in countries that you wouldn't expect, like Nigeria and Kenya. The young people, they don't believe in their own country. They already projecting themselves in this digital world.
Yeah. And that's
So this is
important.
this is where we are. We're not there yet, but we're
Yeah.
also no longer in that old world. We're in, what Gramsci calls the time of monsters, right? Where the the new is not fully born yet, and the old is not fully dead yet, and so we're in
Yeah.
this kind of in between period.
Yeah. And I think what I meant by startups, just so we're clear, is the actual companies, not the people in them. And so the companies are still kind of based on that old model,
It's
even
still
though
a
they're
very
building.
extractive system. To be honest,
Yes.
I've been in startups. I created two startups, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't make you a happy life. Oh, 1 out of 100 people is going to succeed. It's hyper extractive, and if today I meet people like that, I feel sorry for them because they have no peace. They are always one step away from failure, hoping that they're going to make it. And I don't think this is a way to live, to be honest.
Yeah.
The started system has lost its appeal to me. Yes, it's dynamic. Yes, it's energetic, but the human cost,
It's
I
still
think,
extractive of the human. I always
yes,
say that it's built on the backs of young men who are feeling, mostly men, still young
yeah,
men who have a need, a desperate need to survive. And so, and the American startup system is different than the European startup system. It's like
yeah, yeah.
Hunger Games,
They, yeah, they
but
high
it's high.
strung.
Yeah,
You
it's
can just see it in their body language. That they're fighting for their lives.
but the extraction really is how many hours can you work? How much can you build? How much can you? And for me, that's very old thinking still, even though they're building technology, I guess, is that I just wanted, it's not just like old jobs, I feel,
Yeah, yeah,
that are stuck in this mentality. It's also companies that are like, we expect 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, building at hyper speed. And that's the only way to compete. And now with AI, that same that same system is crumbling because now machines can build software faster
yes,
than humans. And so we see it crumbling there too, I believe.
yeah. Can,
And
can I say
in a
like
way,
a general
yeah,
remark on this?
yeah.
So I think this is a useful way to see it. So on the one hand, we have extraction regimes, like new ways of extracting value. So, hunter gathering was one, agriculture and mining was another, industry was another, and now cognitive internet AI is putting itself in place, right?
Hmm.
These systems are extremely costly for human beings. So once you invent agriculture, you are displacing hunter gathering tribes. They become marginal in the mountains and the marshes. Once you have industry, you're marginalizing the farmers. They become a minority in the population eventually, right? And now that we're doing both at the same time, this is going to be very costly for physical and non physical working class people. So historically, societies have reacted against that. So animism and shamanism, if you like, is the way to make the hunter gathering lifestyle human for
Hmm.
small tribes where everybody's kinship and loves each other. Then in civilization itself, it's religion. The world religions. So they're sometimes called the eggshell religions, because in 1200 BC there was some kind of climate change, and all the empires collapsed in the Mediterranean and the Middle East. And out of that came Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, Greek philosophy, Taoism, Confucianism. So in a way, these world religions is a way to humanize what was breaking down before. And I would argue socialism, in a very broad sense, anarchism, even liberalism, they were reactions to industrialism. Like, how can we humanize industrialism, right? And so then the question becomes, what is the reaction today to AI, to the internet? And so my argument is that it's constructive networks today. So it's not a return to religion, although, a lot of people are searching in that
Hmm.
direction. it's also not, a new party that is going to change everything and take power. It's
Mhm.
going to be networks of people that are cosmo-locally organized around a common value proposition and actually decide this is how we want to live and this is how we're going to do it together. So I think, so you did the extractive regime and the purification engine, you put them together, you can have an interesting reading of history. And we are, already in this transformation towards a new extraction regime,
Mhm.
AI based, which is going to
Yep.
be very costly.
Yep.
But there's already also a reaction to it, which is appropriating AI, appropriating, the networks for the co-construction of a life worth living.
Yep. And would you, so there's two things here that I would like to comment. This is, you've gotten to the heart of why I've built House of Peregrine, basically. And so I'd love to hear, well, tell you for a second about it, but also get your input on it. Living abroad, moving abroad is what opened my eyes to this lack of connective layer to international people. So an internet, super important. There's local, like you said, like passports and visas and all this stuff, which they don't match, but you still have to deal in both. But the connective layer, or this, like the internet was too big, but there was nothing local, like meetup groups, those aren't nutritious enough in the way where you can, work on projects together, or you can trade goods, or you can actually harness this workforce that actually doesn't have a visa, that doesn't have maybe full-time work ability, because living abroad, especially partnered, brings up a different time. And so I saw this lack of layer of connectivity, and that is, and the ability to exchange value, whatever value is, money or time or resources or knowledge. And that is what House of Peregrine is at its base, is attempting to build that connectivity layer of people who are doing life together already, but it is a different layer. So there's like the local people that have lived in that place forever. There's tourists, there's migrants, and then there's this people who are maybe both, right? People who have settled, but they're migrants, but they want to exist at this larger level
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
of connectivity. And so that's what House of Peregrine is, and that's why we did it on the blockchain, because that was the most
So the way I interpret what you're doing is the following: is that we used to be collectivists. Like especially in tribal, everybody around you is your, and then civilization is a trauma, right? Because
mhm.
once you have civilization, now you're living with people that you don't know. You have to go to fight in an army with people that you don't know and following orders of people.
I always say there's a cult in every culture, and you were indoctrinated into it.
So basically, civilization is an attempt through religion at first to create an identity beyond the tribe,
Mhm.
to create unity beyond the tribe. And then the nation came. The Western invention is the nation states, which tries to create some kind of cultural homogeneity first, and then create the unity, and that killed the empires. Basically, World War I is we destroy the empires and replace it with the nation state system, which has become the global system. But even though it's relatively successful for a while, it also came at a huge price of atomization, right? And I think that's what modernity eventually does to people, is just more and more atomization. And in a way, what we're trying to do with peer-to-peer and what you're trying to do with Peregrine is healing that atomization and creating new forms of relational and belonging. Because we don't know how to do that. It's what we're getting from the system is not enough to be happy.
Yeah, and much like you're describing, the volunteer or the just giving your time, and
Yeah.
that also
So there's
doesn't work.
different ways, and I think your ways is very interesting because I realize that's a reality. I have the same in Chiang Mai, which is people in between. They're gonna be here for several years, and then they're gonna maybe go to another place where they'll meet similar people, and so
So there
you
is
know
a shared culture. That's
yeah, and so the way they did it. Let me just maybe tell you that as an interesting aside. So I was invited to the first pop-up village in Montenegro, which was the first time that people from the Ethereum community, one of these sub-tribes of crypto, got together because they were actually lonely and had, not enough place where they could talk and
Yep.
learn from each other. It was so successful that it created an explosion of pop-up villages, including in October 25, I think, or 24, a federation of villages in Chiang Mai. There were like 12 different tribes, pop-ups coming together in a more unified identity since they have been in Buenos Aires and different places. So now this, and the third step is something called Zukash that are friends of mine in Turkey, and they want to create fixed oases. So not just like moving around,
Yep.
because you can't really. I mean, these young people are idealistic and say, "Oh, let's find roots and connect with the local population." No way. In a month, you can't do it, right? So now you have people who are actually living there, are semi-nomadic themselves, but then invite people to come to their town and want to create, like a caravanserai of oases along the old Silk Route, right? So you can see, this
Yep.
this whole effort is about actually creating relationship,
Yes.
culture, community, belonging. And what I say, because the last steps are now these network nation, network states. If you don't have sacrifice and solidarity, it's not real enough. That's where you want to get, and that's why we have the nation. Because in the end, your pension, your unemployment, it comes from your nation. Actually, people like us, we lose it because we move
Yep.
around,
That's
and that's
absolutely
a
right.
problem.
And a reality. And that's why it is mostly young people who do it. And then when kids come or when,
And then,
so yeah,
unfortunately, though, what actually happens is they decide no longer to have any kids. So that's, and that, I think that is a problem. A civilization that no longer wants to reproduce itself, that is a problem.
that is a problem. Whether we feel overpopulation or not, it's still a
Yeah.
problem.
Yes.
And that I totally agree. And that's was my sense, right? Like you need to have, and so that's, I think when I read your work on LinkedIn, I followed you for probably at least a year. When I feel such resonance and with my own work with this Cosmo-Local, like you can't just have, like I've been part of DAOs, right? Like we saw what these communities in space do. Then we have all the crypto meetups, which are people from all over the world flying to meet each other because they're lonely, understandably, but it's still not resilient enough to feel like you're part of a culture because we do have real human needs. We have children sometimes, we have sicknesses, we have whatever. We live human lives. Luckily, thank goodness we live human lives. I'm so lucky to live a human life. But that's where this idea for me really connects to reality, the reality of living a more globalized world or a more globalized lifestyle, whether you're a migrant, whether you're an expat, whether you're a digital nomad. These, what you're describing in Turkey and these little places, physical places that are, they have to be connected. Yes, the internet is part of it, but
Yeah, yeah.
uh, they have to have a relationship.
There's a human interweb that
Yes,
needs to
yes.
coexist with the
Yeah.
nodes.
And that takes new values. And that's what the word keeps coming to me when you're talking about religion and then shamanism. And so what emerges for me, and I don't know if you're familiar with the work of like Mark Gaffney or
Oh, yes, I am. I actually work with Zach Stein for two
you
years.
do? I was just with them last week. So
I,
that's
I
why
I
this,
stopped doing it last December. I had a contract that ended.
well, I was just with Zach and Mark last week. So
Well, what a small world.
what a small world. But their idea comes to, I feel like plays with your ideas really
Yeah,
nicely.
of
And
course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the kind of, in the same broad sphere.
yeah. And so when you bring up that's what shined for me is like, oh, it's time for new, and we're already seeing new values, right? Like stateless, same but different, right? Like we honor each other's differences. This is like it's been forever that people live with these values of difference being a strength instead of a weakness. That's the strength of the international community. But how do we make that the question? And this is where I think your ideas come in is like these new paradigms around how we do that, but also why we do that. And that really is beautiful to
Yeah,
me.
and
So that,
so what I'm trying to do, with my modest means, of course, is to make that the question. Like
yeah.
the the,
So say the
the
question.
in the end, the question is like, what kind of transition are we in? And that's the place where I'm putting myself. Is like, we are in a civilizational transition. It's even more than that. That's why I talk about at least 5,000 year shift, because there's different ways to calculate it. You could say writing, alphabet, print, electronic. Then you have four.
Mm.
But actually, until electronic, they were still in the fast communication in the geographic, right? And so, in that sense, this is as important as what happened in Mesopotamia 3,000
Yep.
years before
Yep.
Christ, because this is where the civilization model was like established, evolved.
Organically. Right.
But
Organically.
right now, this is no longer it. This is going
Hmm.
to be something different.
Yep. And that where you think the debates about technology and ecology get stuck, is that people don't realize and they're resisting that, or
Yeah, well,
what?
I think so. With civilization came class and inequality to a degree that wasn't there at all. With tribal. I mean, you have age, you have gender, but there's no class distinction.
Hmm.
So that's civilization. The fact that you have lords and serfs and slaves. All the empires are based on slavery. There's
Yeah.
no hiding from it, right? And now
Yeah.
it's okay. Now it's commodity labor, but basically, if you don't work, you still starve. So it's still very much. I'm not helping you because you're my family. I'm paying you if you do something for me, and otherwise, you're in trouble. So this is what civilization is. It's in a way, there's a harshness to it, right? There's an exploitation to it,
Yep.
and
One
so
that
I think,
we don't get.
and that goes with a certain view on technology and on nature, which I think today are questionable. So the kind of mastery over nature and technology as the tool to do that, right?
Yep.
So I
Yep.
think that's civilizational, and I think if we want to go to post-civilizational, we will have to rethink. There's an author I really like. He's an Orthodox thinker from Russia from the 1920s, Nikolai Berdyaev. He's like a five-stage theory of technology. Let me just briefly give that to you.
Yeah. Great.
So the first is participation. You're in a tribal, you use tools, they're your tools, you master the tools, that you think they're animated by spiritual forces. So then we get into mechanistic. Then it becomes a pure tool, like when you do farming. Then the machine, you already lose control.
Hmm.
It's hard to say whether the machine or you are in charge. But once you get to digital, we lose control. We have become the instrument of the technology, right? And so in the short term, this is not a good place where we're going, because these forces,
And if you're
they're
used to a
controlling us.
dominator model,
If
yeah.
if you're a gig worker, whether you work for Starbucks or for Uber, you are not a master of your world. It's the algorithm dictates what you do, right? So there's no person there anymore, that you can blame, like to be a slave owner, but it's the algorithm owns you. And yeah, and I think this is not the way to go. So then Berdyaev says that precisely because it's so dehumanizing, that will create a liberation, that will say no,
Yeah.
this is not what we want.
So dehumanization leads
To a revolt, a spiritual revolt, and a remastery of the human over the technological.
yeah.
So that's his
And
hope.
how it
Yeah.
Yeah, that's his hope. And that's my question. And this, I keep saying it, and I just want to hear your thoughts on it because I know I know I'm injecting something that maybe, but my read on this type of thinking of reasserting dominance is part of why it's so scary. is because we only know a dominator model. DAOs are obviously not a dominator model. Like we've gone through the other, like completely collective communism, like there was still an overlord in some ways of the state. But that, I wonder, I guess this is the question, is if we need to start looking at that dominator impulse that we're building into all of our systems, right?
Yeah.
Because we think it's
Well,
the only way.
yeah,
And that's what we're
I'm
scared of. We
mixed.
don't want to be
I have
dominated.
mixed feelings about this because
Yeah.
I'm 68. I've gone through my own idealistic phases in my life, and it didn't work. So I don't know. Like, I don't want to answer that question. Like, is
Yeah.
it
I
possible,
understand.
right? And so I've come to a more moderate position, which is good enough to survive.
Mm.
And my claim is it's right now it's not even good enough to survive. Like, we don't have the balance that we need. So there is a Singaporean futurist, he calls it a type 1 civilization. A type 1 civilization is a civilization that is in balance between the regenerative and the extractive. We're not there yet.
Interesting.
We can't do it.
Yeah.
We are
No, we
overshooting.
can't do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I want to say this a bit provocatively. You think about China. I've done a 5-week trip to China, of course, not enough. You know that today in China, they're still polluting, but they're making an enormous progress in the other direction. Like,
They're
amazing.
balancing it.
And if you're a member of the Communist Party of China, you are now judged on two criteria. One is called common prosperity, which includes GDP and poverty reduction. But the other one is ecological civilization. So, in other
Mm.
words, you can't make a career anymore if you don't attend. The results are spectacular because Beijing was 500 ppm. It's clean, blue
Wow.
skies. There's a forest around the city. There's no more oil-based motorcycles. So in a way, I'm not saying they're there yet.
Yeah.
They're not.
But what they've done is
But
taken the value and
yes,
really they've used current models to do a really good job of this balance
yeah,
between.
exactly. They've thought about it. They've made some decisions, and they're doing it.
So it's a retrofit. It's a
Yeah,
retrofit,
and
which is
it's not
great.
enough, but at least you
Yeah.
can see there is something going on.
Yeah. And that was a change of paradigm, right?
Right. And of course, the current political forces in the US, they go in the other direction. They're going back to the petrol.
Yeah, it's a reaction.
I fear for the West right now. It doesn't look good.
Me too. Me too. I want to go back. I'm going to ask you one provocative question, or at least go back to it, because I totally agree with you. Like, obviously, thinking is working within the current system, making progress, but the leap is what I'm, the void and the leap and where we're going is where I'm spending a lot of my time, my creative time. And my provocation that I've said to several people, but I want to see what you think, is there. And I think that Mark and Zach or whoever's writing that book is talking about it as the second shock of humanity
Right.
of
Yeah.
this AI. But my take, my feel, and I'm a very privileged white American person, totally own that. But my provocation about this really important danger that we see, that we talk about with AI and like this change, is my insight is that women have already been through the second shock in a lot of ways because they've been part of this dominator system. And again, it's there whether we want to or not, whether we have equality, whether we can vote, it's still there, right? Like we don't like to talk about it economically, it's there physically when men are big and stronger. And so unidealistically, actually realistically, I love to reimagine what generative looks like within difference. And so, and how to value things equally without things being equal. And that's my
Well,
imagination
do
of
you
the
know
next
Mary
step.
Harrington? Okay, she's kind of she calls herself a reactionary feminist.
Yeah,
Bear
yeah,
with me what that means because it is interesting. So she gives a kind of a history where, before capitalism, families were working as a unit in the same
hmm
space. So once you have industrialization, what happens first is that the men leave.
hmm
And so they're no longer under control. So they start drinking, they go to the prostitutes. And the first feminist movement is actually a kind of moralizing movement to bring the men back under the control of the family, and so that they don't spend their money at the end of the month, and they give the money to their wives, and then they get it back later. So this happened in like the in first wave of industrialization. The second wave was, the bourgeois wave, which is basically getting equal rights. Why can't I have a bank account? Why can't I inherit the same amounts? When my father dies, those kind of questions. So legal equality. The third one she calls biofeminism, and this is the one I grew up with. With anything a man can do, a woman should be able to do. So let's eliminate all the things.
Nice. Yeah.
That includes abortion and contraception. If we want to work, we have to be able to work. We have to be control our physical bodies, so that's not something that stops us from doing it. But here's her critique, and I realize this is a provocative one, but she says
No, I love it.
this comes from a period of abundance.
And
And we are leaving that period of abundance, because we are in overshoot, we are going to we are going to need a new partnership based feminism.
yep.
And
And I would say this is super
I believe in
important
this.
with
So I'm on
yeah,
that side.
yeah.
I think this is what needs to be done, because as much as there are problems, associated with male dominance, there's
Dominance.
also associated with female dominance, which
Absolutely.
already exists in many different fields.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
it's a question of balance, and how do we
Yeah.
get there?
And I see this same exact model playing out with passport strength. So that same idea that everyone's the same is, I feel like, what Donald Trump is operating on. Like every country can defend themselves. It's like, no, they can't. There's
Right.
difference. There's a
Yes.
dominance that is there that you are blowing past and not appreciating, and strength and nuclear power and all this stuff. So when we assume we're equal and the same, I see this the same thing with men and women. I see it exploding into, again, passport strength, like land. Like some people are more economically viable here, or their land is disappearing into the ocean. Like that play of, again, recognizing the dominator model and either recognizing it, being okay with it and using it, or again, what she's talking about, which is make it generative somehow with these differences,
Yeah.
that denial of that already being there,
Of course. Yeah.
I feel like is coming into focus with this AI craze, everyone being scared about it, which in my opinion is somewhat healthy, because it's really bringing out this our creations are now based on dominator models, and that scares us
Right.
appropriately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
because now, like you said,
Well,
machines
in
are the
peer to
dominators.
in the peer-to-peer movement, the way that we talk about this, it's called equipotentiality, right? So in a way, remember in the beginning we talked about like changing of these coordination systems and value systems, right? So essentially what we're trying to do
Mm-hmm.
is we're creating a global open ecosystem of
Mm.
tasks.
Mm.
The whole world can see what needs to be done in every aspect. It's just there for everybody to see.
Mm-hmm.
And then it frees to contribute or not what is
Mm-hmm.
needed in that particular context.
Mm-hmm.
And then the way we change the hierarchy is we change it from command hierarchies to control hierarchies. So today, if you look at a maintainer or an editor, they don't tell you what to do, but they can say no. They protect
Yeah.
the integrity of the ecosystem. Still have power
Perfect.
because
Yep.
they can say no. But they cannot say no to you doing it. They just don't accept your patch because it's not good enough. And things can go wrong, of course, in that context as well. And so this comes with a new vision of equality that
Mm-hmm.
we call equal potentiality. So the thing is, we're not gonna rank you on any general standard. Like we're not gonna say you're a better worker no. The only thing of interest is whether your contribution fits that particular context, yes or no, right?
Mm.
So the human is started to be seen as better and worse in a wide variety of skills and endeavors. And that doesn't actually change your value as a person. I think this is good.
Yeah.
I think this is a a better way than, because this is what we've been doing with basic jobs, is always comparing people, right? You have better exams,
Mhm.
you have better this.
It's based on
But
performance.
it's not, and this is where, identity politics goes completely wrong. Because if you think about it, so meritocracy was egalitarian. This is what people forget. People got jobs because where they were born, they were, the sons of the lords became lords. Meritocracy was against that. Was like, no, everybody has a chance to do the exams. I will take the best. And then the difference between the socialists and the liberals was, on that side I would have been a socialist, which is, well, you can say that we are equal, but we're not, because we don't have education, we die early, so we need to create the conditions so that we can compete for that merit, right? And then what identity politics has done is, no, 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 meritocracy is bad. Let's just give it, because you're female or you're black or you're, and so we start giving people just based on their external, which I think is a big regression. But in peer to peer, that's not what it does, right? It looks at, like,
Uh,
very
Here's my
specifically. Yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
And that's my question. Why and thank you for letting me ask questions, by the way. I love asking questions, so that's so in your when you said the P2P system divides up worldwide tasks, those are tasks that are it's not like you're putting like childcare and making dinner on there, right? Like it's not worldwide tasks. It's tasks for a specific ecosystem, right? With people with certain skill sets.
Contextually based, right? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And so that right there is it already has a bias, which is fine. Biases are fine. But with identity politics, that for me is trying to balance the context. And that is maybe a regression in some ways, but also a recognition that you can't actually operate in the context the same way. And so trying to balance for the context, because the context hasn't changed yet, right? The context being whatever it is, ability to work, racism, sexism, or even just, you know, I don't know, skill, who knows, access to education. And so that I think is an argument to have more micro systems instead of one big system,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which
And that's
I think is what
ideally what
Cosmo-Local,
we get in this, in
yeah,
a peer-to-peer system
yeah,
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that
So
that
can
really
I say something
resonates.
about scale?
Yeah, yeah.
So is so when I talk about cosmolocal, it's not just everything is, cosmic, right? Or because,
Mm-hmm.
some people would say, oh, I'm working on the computer, I'm being cosmolocal because of course I have my body here, and you know. So it's really about three things. One is relocalization. So
Uh-huh.
we believe that the current neoliberal globalized supply system is not compatible with the long-term balance between our use of the planet and the resources. So that's one. So relocalization, in a way, it's an ecological claim. It's that we need to reproduce a lot more things closer to the place of need than we have used to.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because 2/3 of matter and energy is actually spent on transport today.
Mm-hmm.
So by doing this systematically, we can really reduce our human weight on the planet. So hyperlocalization also means autonomy. It's like, where do we get our food from? Where do we get our renewable energy from? So there's a lot of things we can actually get locally. Maybe not everything, because
Yeah.
who knows? The solar panel might still come from China, but it's a way of thinking, right? And thinking of subsidiarity of material production. Where can we sensibly do it more local so that we are lighter on the world? The second is bioregionalism. That's a very important scale, which is the scale of complementarities of regenerative work. I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing permaculture, you're doing renewable energy, you're doing sustainable housing, you're doing biocircular transport vehicles, etc., etc. And so this is ecologically centric, right? Then this is more maybe controversial for some people, but I think that the national level is pertinence because it's history, it's culture, it's politics, it's how people constituted themselves as communities. So I don't think it will disappear, but I think that the nation state can be a vehicle for facilitating bioregional.
Totally. I agree with you.
And then the fourth level is the Cosmo-Local, right? So the way I see it is you have bioregional guilds, and those are people, doing complementary things at the bioregional level, but then you have Cosmo-Local guilds, and they're all the people doing the same thing globally, learning from each other,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So if you do permaculture, you're connected to all permaculturists, and
Mm-hmm.
you're learning in real time, you know, what other people in other similar circumstances have learned. So this is for me, it's a world order. It's a way of conceiving a new civilization
Yep.
that is already there.
Yep. And and you've just described House of Peregrine. You've just described it.
All right.
Like, well, that's what we're building. And
Yeah.
that synergy between a worldwide network of exchange of ideas, but also, I mean, that's exactly that is the reason I resonate so strongly with your work, is because that is the connection to House of Peregrine, because that is the layer where we are building that. I love that. For me, at least, that was my journey through crypto and seeing how extracting and trying to replace the nation state and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, cool. Like that
It
is super
didn't
important.
it didn't have the relational values,
Exactly.
right? They were
Exactly.
dreaming of trustlessness and
Yes,
everything done through these anonymous, and that's not,
absolutely. Yep.
the human is not working that way. It didn't work.
Luckily, humans don't work that way. And of course, you do need some trust, trustless, and we do need to think through that, but that's not the ideal. That's not reality. And anyone who isn't living on a computer, like I'm married to a tech guy, I love him, but like Uber is not the ultimate, you know what I mean? Like that is a cool invention, but it's not made for families. It's not made for, and now it's more global than it was when it started. But these companies that are being, and I would include crypto in this, these inventions are not always, they aren't based on humanity. They're based on a human who is not very connected to the world.
Yeah, I don't know if you will agree with this. It's a bit controversial.
No,
I
please
get
do.
this from a guy called P.F. Jung, which I like as an integral thinker. And he
Mhm.
says that the big problems today is autism and schizoid.
Yeah, and I've heard his work. I've heard his work, and I don't agree with him using the word autism. So I just want to put that in because this is my podcast. Because autism has been disproved from actually being devoid of empathy. That's
Right.
like scientifically they don't lack empathy. And so I would say lack of empathy and schizophrenia, I'm okay with
Okay,
saying.
it's fine. Yes.
Yeah.
So, but the idea, right, that some people, totally focused on some logical coherence at the expense of everything else, and that's,
Yep.
exaggerated. And then
Yep.
other people just follow their gut, like Trump in a way, right? And
Hmm.
follow their feeling and don't see anything else. And these are like two extremes that are there and that are, we have to watch out for.
Yeah. And also, like you said, relationality, the connection between humans has not been considered. It's
Yeah.
been
But
exploited, but
I
it
would
hasn't.
still agree, and maybe that's a prejudice, but that a lot of people that I meet in the software developing world, do have more of this kind of like tendency to be disembodied, you
Yep.
know,
Yeah.
and that is
Or
a
like,
problem because they're designing our stuff, you know.
totally agree. Yep. And that I had this huge discussion with my partner early on about what the word technology and progress means.
Uh-huh.
And technology could only be used for certain things. And I was like, wait a minute, there's relational technology, there's all these technologies that are there, spiritual technologies even, that
Yeah,
we
of
can
course.
download. And he just went, for a lot of years we had this debate, and he's obviously a very technical person. And progress, what is progress? Is it making something new and shinier? And what is progress? Because progress for me looks different than progress for you, and it's not always the next biggest thing, in
Yeah, yeah,
one straight line, right?
yeah,
And so I feel like that is, and we don't have humanity, and this is again Mark Gaffney's work. Humanity is not at the center, technology's at the center.
Yes.
And those three things is what I totally agree. And technology for technology's sake. And honestly, I think that's why we see AI coming out the way it is with those misconceptions coming. And that's what scares us, right? We don't want those people in charge,
Maybe it's
those
because
things in
I'm
charge.
getting older, but
Yeah.
I don't feel really, honestly, that any technology that we're doing now is actually bringing much to the table that we didn't have before. I think this is not what it's about. It's not about, as much as I appreciate it as an intellectual to be able to search the
Yeah.
whole. So let me give you my thoughts about AI, and I'm really sorry, we need
You
to
got to
wrap it
go. I
up.
know. Yeah.
But so I see AI for two things. One is universal synthesizing machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we had not enough information. So then we invent the internet, then we have too much information. And we can no longer absorb our own production. And this is what AI solves. It's a permanent synthesizing machine, and I'm very appreciative of what it does. As a researcher, I can really make much faster progress if I use it, and if I don't use it, it has dangers, but overall it's used. And then the second use for me is this kind of a trinity between the human, the more than human, in terms of nature, the web of
Mm-hmm.
life, and the artificial. I do think that if we want to live in balance
Mm-hmm.
overall with nature as a complex society, that we do actually need the AI as an interface as well with nature. And so I don't know if you know Austin Wade Smith. I recommend you talk to him. He talks about ecological institutions, and it's how to make the non-human visible to the human is the central question of our era. I really like that.
Really love that too.
Like the bees and the earthworms, we need them, but how do we know their needs? It will require all kinds of tools as well to make their worldview visible to us. So that's kind of my relative conclusion of our conversation, is that the next civilization needs to have these three things in balance.
Yep. I could not agree more. Could not find a better place for us to land our conversation that went all over the place. So thank you for following that. And I think highly relevant to international life and some of the things we all grapple with. And I know you have done this for many years as well. Thank you for bringing all of that fun. I hope our audience was able to follow along. Where can people find out more about your writing and your work and what you're
So first
currently?
of all, I have a wiki.p2pfoundation.net, which has 40,000 articles.
Wow. Okay.
So I monitor and curate what's happening in that field since 2005.
Wow. Okay.
So it's a record of civilizational transition in every field: business, spirituality, transportation, you name it, we have it. The second thing is I write regularly for Substack, and that's fourthcivilization.substack.com. So with those two, and I'm on X, Bauwens, Bauwens as well.
Okay. We'll link those below. And I know you got to run, so I'm going to let you go. But thank you for spending the
Yes,
time. And I hope we get to have another conversation soon.
it was great to talk to you. Very stimulating. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you too. And thanks everyone for listening. And I'll see you next time. Okay, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed our show. For the latest insights on living internationally, join us at houseofperegrine.com to find out how you can connect with our community. Let's craft our life story with intention together.